How's that project going along?
It's going well, going well. We're
Yeah,
still drilling. We're 6,000 feet down the vertical, and it's going solid. So everything's looking really good. Yep,
that's gotta feel
yep. Very
good.
happy. It is. It is. There's always an anticipation. Rigs moving out and everything's getting ready to go. Especially we moved out further, a lot further west in Oklahoma. So it's just, I don't want to say it's a new area, but it's far away from where we were drilling before. So everything's a little bit new in that regard. So yeah.
When do you guys start getting like drilling reports that you have to review for like, what's the flow and all that? Like, how do you know? How do you find out when it's a good
Day
well?
one. Oh, okay. So for that, that's going to be, it depends on how long frac timing is and all that stuff. Like if everything's lined up to run great, like we'll spud in, we'll drill this well in 30, 40 days. They'd come out and frac it. That'd probably take drill out, say 2 to 3 weeks. So, by the time you spud in and then you finally get to flow back, you're probably, and your first flow back's usually just water heavy for the first week or two. You're probably talking 2.5 months minimum is what I would guess
Okay,
for something like this.
so it takes some time.
So yeah, but that's pretty quick. I mean, there's a lot of these that it's a 6 month process. So
Cool.
yeah,
Good to
yep,
know. We had I don't know, my 4th of July, it feels like everyone's still on vacation or like coming back and like going through stacked emails and like all that fun
oh
stuff.
yeah.
So,
A lot of the guys
but
will say what vacation, right? You saw one of those comments. He's like,
yeah,
hey, holidays are just another day of the year,
no, I mean, I'm still checking email throughout the week. I hate to say it, but I mean, it's just
right?
part of it's checking email. Got to take that phone call. It is what it is, right? So,
Exactly.
but anyways, we had someone found our Easter egg last week.
Okay. Yep.
And actually, you went and pulled some fancy report on the actual drilling of it, which
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I don't know how accurate that was. I just went to drilling info and then searched the
Yeah.
entire U.S. for horizontal wells with the deepest measured depth. So
So when those words came out of my mouth, and I was like, all right, like this shouldn't be that hard to find out. Like,
right,
how that's got to be common knowledge, right? And it's nope, like couldn't find it anywhere. And I'm sure we could
right,
have dug a lot deeper, but I don't have time for that on a casual podcast. So, anyways,
right.
it wasn't great. But then, obviously in the comments we got the answer, and we're sending that care package out. But so Expand Energy in
Huh?
May
Yep.
drilled the longest lateral at was in 657 feet. The longest well, so I think that's the TVD, right? Or
What,
no?
the lateral length?
Well, the lateral is going to be the
Right.
the the the
Horizontal portion.
right, the horizontal part, and then you got the
Yep.
longest well, which is the TVD at 34,507.
That'd be the measured depth, MD.
Okay, okay, so it's the other way around.
34,507. That sounds about right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. So I'm gonna have to draw a picture of this because that'll help me understand it. But then here's what got me. So the Expand Energy, the record-breaking stat was the longest single bit BHA run in
Yes.
U.S. land,
Yeah.
30,368 feet. So the BHA is the bottom hole assembly. Why is that notable? Like why is that a big deal? Maybe that's the whole thing. I don't know.
My jealousy is, oh God, I'm just green with envy. How long did they say that was? Did they say it was
30?
30,000 feet? I'll tell you why that's notable. It's because I've had lateral runs in Oklahoma that were 60 feet long. Like you would put a fresh bit in the hole and
Yeah.
you come out, every cutter's gone. It's a nub. Like you drill, there's some formations here that have a lot of chert or pyrite or different things like that. And even though you're using PDC bits, right, which is
Hmm.
like diamond cutter bits, like it'll absolutely destroy those cutters and then subsequently the matrix and all that stuff in a matter of feet. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Jeez.
So for them to be able to go out and do 30,000 feet is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, part of that, let's just be honest, part of that's due to the geology and the rock.
I was gonna
You know what
say
I
it's
mean?
got to be the rock.
Right.
Yeah.
There's I would say a big portion of that. Because let me tell you, if I could drill 30,000 foot laterals in one run in Oklahoma, I would 100% do it. So a lot of that is the rock, but also, the the motor, the bit selection, all those different things play into it. But the rock is what I would say a lot of times the limiting factor. We could pick up that same BHA here, and there's just
Yeah.
no way you get 30,000 feet on that one.
And you'd probably pay a lot more for a bit if they could guarantee you, a lot more distance on it too. I'm sure, you know what I mean? It's not like you guys are using cheap bits. It's pretty
Right.
much an industry standard. They're probably using the same thing or something similar, right?
It's probably similar. I mean, that's a bit of an
Yeah.
assumption, but yes, I mean,
Yeah.
if they could guarantee me a bit that would give me like 3 times the run length, like
Yeah.
I'd pay 3 times what they
Right.
want for it
Of
because
course. Yeah.
it saves trips, it saves
Yeah.
slug costs, it saves all these different things. And so yeah, you'd be able to name your own price. But the problem is that usually you can't. I mean, you can't
Right.
guarantee that.
So I mean, basically, you're telling me like after 60 feet, you have to trip out, put a new bid on, and go back in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Oh my
100%.
God, I didn't even
So you
think
go
of that.
down, you
Yeah, I
go
didn't
down, you
think about
drill for
that.
a couple hours, and then you trip for, depends on your depth out there. For us, like, you go down, you do a 60-foot run, and then you end up tripping out and putting a new bit on, going right back down. You drilled for 2 hours and you tripped for 16,
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's okay.
All right. So, Peter, all right. All right. So, yeah, we'll just do this off the cuff. All right.
Yeah.
So, Peter, I've learned a few interesting things about you as we go. Okay, so number one, whenever we think of oil and gas, we think of, at least I think of Oklahoma, Texas, Ohio's popping off, the Marcellus up in the
Hmm.
Northeast. Now, California used to have a really good background on drilling. I've seen the photos of Long Beach with all those wooden derricks just like lying on the beach. So, like, what got you into it? What made you really interested in it to where you wanted to start a podcast like this?
So, man, about 5 years ago, I was helping a friend of mine. He has a insurance agency for home and auto, right? And
Okay.
so I just was kind of helping him set some stuff up, and I really enjoy like the operation side of things, like, you know, I guess helping people do their best work and bringing out the best in what they can do. So did some consulting with him. I was spent 15 years, running a BMW dealership, which in hindsight, it was a lot of fun, but I got into insurance, long story short, right? And
Right.
an engineer friend of mine who spent a ton of time offshore. He's got 2 kids. He didn't want to be, doing that anymore. So he's like, I got kids. I want to be home. I get 30 days on,
Right.
30 days off, flying all over the world, getting shot at sometimes in North Africa or South Africa, just, it's
Yeah.
like, it's just not, it's like the danger wasn't fun. So he's like, let's do insurance. And so like in a roundabout way, got really into oil and gas. And I think for the past now 4 years, I've done nothing but consume everything I can on oil and gas. And it's an industry that I wish I'd gotten into a lot sooner. Like, like, and I guess you can't really wish that to be the case, but I
Right.
love it that much, right? It's truly an obsession for me and the amount of people that I've gotten to talk to over the past couple years. So, and that's how you and I started talking was, okay, we need an engineer to come in because we kind of view the insurance side of things through an engineering lens. And that's been
Hmm.
successful for us because, insuring oil and gas companies, underwriters don't always know what they don't know.
Right.
And so they overrate stuff. So anyways, we started recording these videos to kind of teach others in our company how things work, how they work, so I can learn, ask questions, maybe get a little bit deeper. And then we just started posting them online, and that's so. I don't even know if we're like a podcast yet. People have called me, and that's my favorite part of this is people will DM me or email me and say, "Hey, would love to talk. Here's my phone
Right.
number." Or I'll share mine. We end up talking to each other for maybe 15, 20 minutes. Talking to a guy this morning, 6 a.m. So 4 a.m. my time, 6 a.m. his time as he's driving to the field. And I'm just,
Right.
this is so cool. Like I get to connect with some really great people and hear their stories.
Right.
So anyways, that's why I'm doing it. I just love learning, I guess, is part of it.
I
And then
got you.
being able to maybe pay that forward somehow. I don't know yet, but so that's what we're doing. It's been fun, but is it a podcast yet? I don't think so, but maybe someday.
Just a interview Q&A type deal. So,
Yeah, yeah,
all
it's
right.
fun. I mean, you got to figure it out as you go, right? And that's been the cool part. And like community on TikTok's cool. The YouTube is cool. We've got the newsletter going now. I mean, it's slowly building up. But my daytime job is insurance conversations and reviewing MSAs and all that fun stuff.
So you go out and you're working with the oil and gas companies. You're also bringing in this insurance side. Where do you where do you see that moving forward? Do you see a lot of growth, I guess, because you're marrying these two things?
Yeah, I do. I think where it's going in a directional way is like, obviously we have these AI things or LLMs and you can put all this information in. If you look at like what Collide is doing,
Huh?
building out these databases and, doing EHS and stuff that's like built into that. I think you're going to see more specialization in, these fields. So, there's going to
Right.
be attorneys that are going to focus on oil and gas. I know they're already out there, but there's generalist attorneys that you might bring in to review an MSA and it's like, no, we should be talking to a specialist. Oil and gas insurance is very specialized. There's only so many carriers. Most people have been with their broker for 20 plus years. but they might not be telling the right story, and they're getting the wrong risk profile, and they're not getting the right attention. So I like being an independent broker, right? I'm not tied to one of the giant houses.
Right.
So like I can still work with my clients one on one and actually move the needle. But I love the future stuff, right? So we try to implement a lot of that into what we're doing now as much as possible. And it's not there's not tools readily available for this. And I think that's what makes it fun, right? At the end of the day, we get to build all these really cool things, and it actually helps the carrier, it helps the client, and it helps, the broker place the coverage properly.
Have you seen good reception to, when you talk about like bringing in engineers or bringing in specialists to kind of help along with a lot of these, the process of, underwriting and all that? Are you seeing that well received from a lot of your clients?
Yeah, I am. And the biggest piece of it, Wade, is that you're so like our you've sat in on some of those meetings, right? And
Right.
they're not it's not necessarily, like the client's not necessarily talking to you and saying like, "Hey, I need to go do this," or "This is what's happening on my
Right.
well site." But the presence of an engineer informing in your corner and having that person there, and you educating me on certain things and learning the language, that's critical. Because I can tell you a couple years ago when I was learning kind of the ropes of all of these coverages and things like that, you can tell really quick when someone doesn't know what they're talking about, right? I mean, and
Right.
I've asked stupid questions on this podcast before for a reason. And sometimes, I'd like to think I know kind of what the answer is, but I don't always. But once you learn the language and you can convey that to the underwriter and then also turn around and talk to the insured, that way too, it's just as critical. So, because everyone's got a different language, right? And if you're not speaking their language, you might as well, hang it up and go home.
I think one of the biggest things that I pulled away from it was just kind of seeing how you guys operate and talk to these companies that you're working with. I mean, it wasn't just educational for me. I mean, it felt at times educational for the client that you're working with, because they aren't spending every minute of every day in the insurance space. I mean, they're
No.
they're out there worried about executing on their wells or doing all these different things. And so, for me, it was just it was kind of eye opening seeing how much of that, what I would, I hate to call it the sales process, but I mean, at
Hmm.
the end of the day, I think that's maybe what it could be described as just being purely educational about, here's what this means and here's what that means, and here's where you're kind of undercovered or overcovered or different things like that. And you being able to find that space to save money or provide, greater risk coverage
Yeah.
was pretty impressive, really.
Well, and at the end of the day, I know that it comes down to price, right? So, I used to be on the, going back 15 years to my dealership days, we're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in insurance premiums.
Right.
And you had to go out and you had to talk and you had to quote. There's all these different things that you have to kind of think about. And so what I started to do was kind of built a process for like how I would shop it. And here's my strategy. So that actually worked really well. And, I kind of had a really good formula for doing our renewals every year, which I hated it, right? But at the same time, I
Right.
was like, at least I know how to get through this the right way. And so we've taken a lot of that strategy and applied it, to this because it's the same thing. A lot of these guys are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And even if you're paying,
Right.
20 grand a year on your coverage, it's still a massive portion of your bottom line. It's still an expense, right? The way that we do it is kind of the traditional thing, which is let's review what you have, just so we can set a baseline
Right.
of how the carrier looks at the client and how they're viewed through that lens, and then we go through benchmarking of here's where you are, here's where your peers are at, based on losses, based on market. There might be only 5 carriers that you want to look at, but then that's where the negotiation comes in, the needle moving, right? And then how do we get everyone to compete? So it's super fun. Like I love the negotiation side of it. To me, if you can bring in and we're going into a softer market, so we should be seeing a lot pricing starting to go down, at least in most areas. But like I've seen, 12 to 26% decreases, right? I mean, in premium just because of how you
Right.
approach it. That's the fun part is like, what can I actually do for the client without reducing coverage, right? So
Right.
I don't know. There's so many pieces to it. I'm still learning every day. I think you have to go into this job thinking, just like your job, I'm going to learn something today, right? And if you
Right.
don't, it probably wasn't a very good day.
Well, kind of getting to see underneath the hood a little bit by, joining some of those meetings and working with you. I've started to realize how many people are actually involved in that process, and it kind of reminded me of some of the when you ask questions about how many people are out there on a rig or how many people does it take to do that. And you've got one or two people that are usually very visible, and then you've got dozens of people right behind them who are doing the work right alongside them.
Yeah.
So I've been really impressed with that process.
Yeah, and I mean, even as I'm talking to you, I'm like, it's hard to craft like what I really do, right? It's the end product. I just know that it's working and that we have the right pieces in place and the right strategy in place to execute. And I
Right.
think that's my biggest drive right now is like we have all these great things, like how can we execute? And the engineering part of it is so much fun because like it almost makes me want to like quit doing insurance and just go work on a drill site because I think it's like it's truly I love it that much. Like it's I know you can, I know you could, but that's how much I love this industry.
I got you. Well, you've told me before that you're kind of a gearhead, right? Where'd that come
I know that people hear, oh, you're from California, and it's like, yeah, but there's different parts of California. You got to remember, like, it's not all beaches and downtown, right? There's a lot of
from? Right.
rural parts of it that are, everyone does
A lot
4-H
different.
where I'm from, and there's a horse farm across the street, and there's a chicken farm, a couple blocks away. Like, it's all very rural. So,
I got you. All right.
yeah,
Yeah, I grew up changing my own oil and doing those things from my dad, but man, I eventually bought a 93 Bronco and just loved fixing it up and working on it, keeping it running. I mean, we haven't done tons to it, but
yeah.
there's something really gratifying about working with your hands, having something at the end of the day that's uh that you've done, you physically
Oh,
done.
totally. You need that,
Yep.
and like, I mean, that's part of the reason why I like where I live, right? Because you can, spend a Saturday with my son, and we do clean up a bunch of stuff, and it looks,
Right.
it's just you feel good about it at the end of the day, right? And but man, a '93 Bronco. So I'm gonna like, I look out here, I can't find one because everyone wants to, try to triple their money on them, but I got to come out there and drive one back or something. That might be
Well,
the trip because it'd be
there's
fun to
quite a
work
few
on
for
one.
sale. There's a lot for sale on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah,
So
not here. I'm having a little more trouble, but I love the
we'll
Broncos.
find you one.
I
We'll
love the
find you one.
Broncos.
Yep.
You gonna do a repaint on it, or like, do you still have it?
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, like I think it's nice. It's got a couple little scratches on it and stuff, but nothing bad. I love it because I don't worry about it. We leave the top of it off of it all year round, park it in the garage. It's white on the outside with the red interior. It
Mm,
drives really well. I have had one of the guys I work with up here, it did just die on me in the parking lot one day, and I think I left it here for like 2 weeks while I was trying to figure out what was going on with it, and finally figured out it was just like a starter cable. It wasn't
yeah,
even the
yeah,
starter itself, but it took me forever to find. I mean, I'm learning as we go here, and not the most adept at figuring this out, but it's been a lot of fun, and I've
yeah.
enjoyed it.
It's funny how like you can some people are good at working on cars, and then but they couldn't do what you do, right? And it's the other way around. It's like I feel like anyone that says they're an engineer, it's like, okay, so you could fix anything, and it's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
No, not at all. Well, I tell you, like I love like on a drilling rig, like some of the most important work we do sometimes as an engineer is like if we get stuck, you're working pipe, you're watching all your data and all that stuff, trying to figure out, hey, what else could we do different to try and get this unstuck? And like even when you're out there on location, like I still feel like at the end of it, you're really excited that you got the pipe unstuck, but at the same time, it's like all that stuff happened 10,000 feet underground, and I'm just sitting over there, kind of talking to the driller as we're doing all that stuff, and so I don't know, there's something about doing something with your hands that just gives a different level of satisfaction. Even though, you fix a $20 part in my Bronco, it's not near as important as, getting
Yeah,
10,000 feet of drill pipe unstuck. There's still something about it that's just extremely gratifying.
for sure. No, I 100% agree. I think that I don't know. Hopefully, most of the people on here, I'm sure they agree with that.
Yep.
Who knows?
One
That
of
could
the
be a controversial topic, though. We found that out.
one of the best weeks that I think I've ever had professionally. A few years ago, I think it was like February of 2021, Winter Storm Uri, I can't remember how to say it, URI, came through Oklahoma and Texas. It was whenever it was cold for like 2 or 3 weeks. And when I say cold, like one of the first nights that we were out there, like we were running heat trace on all these producing wells and doing all this stuff, just trying to keep them from freezing up, trying to keep gas going to the markets. And it was like negative 15 degrees on these locations. And it was one of the most gratifying work weeks of my life because I was actually out in the field. I was working with this amazing group of guys. It was, kind of tough conditions. You have, this like shared struggle and all this stuff. But like, we actually got to do things with our hands. Like, would I want to do that all day, every day? No, like that would be extremely, extremely challenging.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but that week, like even though it was freezing cold and just all these different things, like living in a fifth wheel on location when the heater goes out, all that stuff was tough. But at the same time, man, it was an awesome week being
Well, and
out
I
there
think
running
there's
around.
like a brotherhood element to that too, right? I mean, you've got
Oh
all
yeah.
these people that are, we're all here for the same reason, same mission. We're going to get through this and we're going to get through it together. I think like that, you're unstoppable at that point, right? It's exhausting, but there's definitely a brotherhood or, for,
That's one of the reasons why I love going out to the rig is because it's the closest thing I can get right now to feeling like I'm back on a team, like but
totally.
when I was playing baseball or football in high school, doing all that stuff, it's really a great feeling. And even more so with those guys. I mean, like they're out there, most of our guys are working 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and so they're spending a lot of time with the guys out there and really building those bonds. So
Well, we're going to keep today short. I had one question for you though, because it kept bugging me. And I was like, this is
okay.
the one question I want to ask this week.
All right.
So, anyways, a few weeks ago, you were talking about how drill pipe is flexible, right? I'd asked
Yes.
you a question on that, so it can move and go horizontal. And we kind of glossed over the detail, but you mentioned that the drill pipe can counter rotate. There's
Yes.
like an elastic energy that gets built up, and
Right.
it like goes the other direction. Just curious, like maybe if we could talk a little bit more about why that
Okay.
happens, or how it's
Right.
managed.
A lot of times that happens through like drill string torque. Okay. And so you've got a motor down there, and as the rotor and the stator, or I'm sorry, as the rotor is spinning inside the stator, as you're pushing down through there, that's creating some torque, but you're also adding surface torque up there. And if you're getting big bites with your bit, what can happen is that you can, well, just imagine this. So imagine that you've got a rubber band and you kind of twirl it up. You've got a weight on the end of it. And as you release it, what happens, right? Like you're twirling it up, you're building up all this energy, and then it starts releasing back the other way. And that's essentially what's happening with your drill string right there. You can get so much like torque built up into your string that whenever it releases, it overcomes like your surface torque from your rotary, and it will go into like what we call a backwards whirl scenario. Now that doesn't get all the way up to your surface, right? Like it's not like every foot of your drill pipe is spinning. Your motor and your MWD, which are right down there, right at the bit in the bottom couple hundred feet, your BHA, like you were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
that can actually experience a backwards rotation.
And is it more of like a slip, or is it more of like just
Yeah,
a full on? It's probably more of a slip than a full
it's a
recoil.
slip. Yep.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's backwards whirl. The other thing it's called a stick slip as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
Yep. And
Cool.
so that's
Good to know.
exactly what's happening.
And
Yep.
then kind of part of that is, as you're drilling, you've got dog legs, right? And I was
Right.
just kind of seeing like the dog legs can kind of hurt your torque or the casing. Is that something that comes up too, like being a challenge?
Yeah, so dog legs I mean, dog leg is just a quick change or a bend in the well bore, right? And the more bends you have, the more torsion you've got in your well path, and the more torsion you've got, usually the more friction you've got. And so what that just causes is an increase in pipe and what I'd say, yeah, the friction between the pipe and the hull. And so whether that's casing, whether that's drill pipe, you accumulate enough of that and you just can't go any further, whether that's drilling, running, casing, or whatever. So
And you
you
can't
see that.
avoid dog legs either. Like that's your deviation, right? That
Right.
the same thing, similar. So I
Yep.
mean, those are
All of
unavoidable
those.
for the
Those
for
are
the most part.
unavoidable. A lot of people though that you can manage them. So essentially like there's new tools, I say new tools, the last couple of decades. They're called rotary steerable. And so what that is it's essentially think of it as a motor that you can point the bit and you can set it to change pad force as you're drilling. And so essentially you'll tell it like achieve an 8-degree dog leg, and it's constantly doing calculations downhole to adjust the pad force to achieve whatever your desired dog leg is. And so it's a very, very smooth change in inclination or change in angle is what that is. Whereas when you're doing this with a motor assembly, say that you take a survey right here and right here, but you put your slide in this interval right here, what it's essentially doing is averaging out that little dog leg across this entire interval. And so it may be an 8-degree dog leg is what it calculates out to be, but if you look at that little slide, it was probably a 14 or a 15-degree dog leg. Whereas with those rotary steerables and the way that they work and are constantly recalculating and changing as you go, it's essentially just 8 degrees across the entire length of that interval.
Huh. I mean,
So
yeah, there's got to be, I mean, just talking about, everything that we were last a little bit earlier,
right.
with the BHAs, but I mean, the drill bit technology has to be almost just as interesting, 'cause, to learn how it works on just the drill bit alone there's got to be a whole science to that also.
Oh yeah, they've if you go down to Houston, they've got labs where they design, test. I mean, and a lot of them now are using AI to try and help with hydraulics or depth of cut, just calculating all these different things. I've even seen there's one company out there right now that is taking essentially what they're doing is taking all these pictures of their bits after they've been run to determine what the wear patterns are. So bit grading for most companies is like, oh, like a consultant pulls it out on location, like, oh, 1-3 worn, worn teeth or worn shoulders or whatever. But what this company is doing is taking those into their facilities, and they take essentially like a topographic 3-dimensional picture of those bits.
Hmm.
And then they can put that into their database and try and make adjustments based off of what they're seeing from very accurate real-time feedback. I mean, we're talking millimeters of changes in bit
Well,
wear.
and that'll change by basin. I mean, I think that's another
Oh yeah,
part. So when you ask about like the future of oil and gas, where does that collide with insurance, all of that? Like that's another part of it is like we have all of these companies that are making these adjustments on, the iron roughnecks and all these like the safety adjustments, the HS conversations that are being had, like all these little things are really coming to a point where the oil and gas is not going to be as risky. There's still going to be risk. It's probably one of the higher risk industries in the world. But
right,
that's where I love the amount of innovation and brain power in this industry. Again, it's untouched. It's
right.
unblows it blows.
Yep, yep. It is. It's great to be a part of the industry.
Anyways, I got to run. I have another meeting
All right.
I got to go to, but
Sorry. I
no,
apologize for
man,
running
we're
over. I
we're all
was on a
working. It's
call
good.
and totally lost track of time.
No, it's all good. Thank you guys for joining this week's rambling episode. We're still going to post it up, and we'll see you again next week.
All right.
Thanks.